Hello and welcome to Lunchtime Politics, reaching you live from our global headquarters here in the nation's commercial nerve center, Lagos, where we'll bring you up to speed with the big happenings in politics and in the polity. Let's get started with the headlines. And that long-awaited decision, the Supreme Court has upheld the power of a president to declare a state of emergency in any state to prevent the breakdown of law and order or degeneration into chaos or anarchy. Billionaire businessman Aliko Dangote accuses NDDC of colluding with international traders and oil importers to frustrate local refining by continuous issuance of import licenses for petroleum products, demands investigation of authority boss Faruk Ahmed for alleged corruption and humongous spending on children's school fees abroad. And SERAP insists the Attorney General and Minister of Justice, Lateef Fagbemi, SAN, and President Tinubu must publish names of those indicted in alleged misappropriation of NDDC 6 trillion naira meant for over 13,000 projects between 2000 and 2019. Welcome again to the program. It's an all-access pass to what's playing out in the polity, and we can tell you right now the story we were just getting from the Supreme Court is that it has upheld the power of a president to declare a state of emergency in any state to prevent a breakdown of law and order or degeneration into a state of chaos or anarchy. In a split decision of 6-1, the Apex Court held that the president during a state of emergency can suspend elected officials, but that such suspension of elected officials must be within a limited period. In a lead majority judgment, Justice Mohammed Idris held that Section 305 of the Constitution empowers the president to deploy extraordinary measures to restore normalcy where emergency rule is declared. Justice Idris noted that Section 305 is not specific on the nature of the extraordinary measures, thereby granting the president the discretion on how to go about it. The judgment was on a suit filed by Adamawa and 10 other People's Democratic Party-led states challenging the propriety of the state of emergency declared by President Bola Tinubu in Rivers State, during which elected state officials were suspended for a period of 6 months. Justice Idris, in an earlier part of the judgment, upheld preliminary objections raised by the two defendants against the competence of the suit. In upholding the objections raised by the Attorney General of the Federation and the National Assembly, the defendant, Justice Idris, held that the plaintiffs, that's the 11 PDP states, failed to establish any cause of action capable of activating the original jurisdiction of the Apex Court. He struck out the suit for want of jurisdiction, proceeded to also determine the case on merit and dismissed it. However, Justice Obande Ogunya dissented and held that the case succeeded in part. Among others, Justice Ogunya held that although the president could declare a state of emergency, the president cannot use such power as a tool to suspend elected state officials, including governors, deputies, and members of parliament. Well, that is an interesting development in our jurisprudence, and trust me, there's going to be a lot of talking points because finally the Supreme Court has made a pronouncement. There are those who agree and those who disagree. But let's also tell you something that is playing out in the oil and gas sector, which I call our cash cow, where the president and chief executive of the Dangote Group, Aliko Dangote, is accusing the chief executive officer of the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority, Mr. Faruk Ahmed, of corruption, alleging that he spent $5 million on secondary school education for his children in Switzerland. During a press briefing at the Dangote Petroleum Refinery and Fertilizer Plant in Lekki, that's in Lagos State, Mr. Dangote describes the alleged expenditure as inconsistent with the public servant's income and called for Mr. Ahmed's prosecution.
Why, we should continue to allow, some corrupt government officials to try and destroy a whole sector of the economy. Today, as we speak, the uh, uh, um, the I don't know what is the, that is the authority chief executive, Malam Farouk. Malam Farouk has 4 of his children that he educated in Switzerland at the cost of $5 million for their secondary school education alone, not university. And I know that one of them just finished Harvard. So I want to now see what kind of system are we operating that, people are now busy destroying a country, taking money from the government. Because when you look at his income does not match paying this kind of fees. I think even if it's me paying $5 million for 6 years for my 4 children, the taxman has to look at my taxes, how much I paid. And really, this sort of thing, we're not going to allow it to continue. We'll take it up to the highest authority so that they will look at it. People who have done something wrong must be prosecuted. The man must come and explain to Nigerians how he paid $5 million for 6 years of his 4 children's education.
As Aliko Dangote, the chairman of the Dangote Group, well, he didn't hold, no holds by, he called names. So we'll be expecting Mr. Farouk Ahmed to maybe respond to these very hefty allegations. $5 million for his children's school fees. That's, I think, the one that is catching everybody's attention. But besides that, the bigger other issue is to the effect that he's saying licenses are still being issued to importers and is killing the local refinery capacity or the local refinery effort that some of them are brought to bear that has been Nigeria's dream for a long time. There's also the argument of monopoly and all of that. So let me bring in my guest, who is big on fighting corruption. Kolawale Oluwadare is a deputy director at SERAP, Socioeconomic Rights and Accountability Project. Thank you so much for coming on the program.
Well, thank you very much. You made that sound like I'm EFCC chairman, but I'm not.
No. But you are one of the people we're proud of. There's always a watchdog. Like there's every other day. There's SERAP is in the court, making sure there's accountability. Now, why I invited you is to the fact that we'll come back to this if we have time to the issue of Dangote Refinery. But I want to discuss what I brought you for, which has to do with the NDDC. There was a lot of hullabaloo around the forensic audit. I remember all of the off-your-mic incidents and everything. Finally, the report came out. We don't know what has been made out of that report. But you have gone to court to say, look, some people were named, indicted in that report. Federal government, we need to know who they are. So that's part of the excerpt of your release that you wrote, that we've urged Mr. Lateef Fagbemi SAN, the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, to immediately enforce the judgment compelling and directing him and President Bola Tinubu to widely publish the names of those indicted in the alleged misappropriation of 6. This amount is staggering my brain. That's I was talking to my colleague. When I heard the amount, I was like, what exactly is this? Okay, I don't know what's going on. Okay, I think we're here now. 6 trillion naira meant to implement the abandoned. That figure is what I was trying to highlight with my pen. 13,777 projects. What 6? And in the running of the Niger Delta development between 2000 and 2009. This money is staggering.
Yeah.
Talk to us about this case.
It's actually something very interesting, and I'm sure every Nigerian would have followed it when Buhari was president then. Of course, it generated a lot of hype then, President Muhammadu Buhari being big on corruption, allegedly, or as you would say, reportedly. And then he commissioned the forensic exercise. And you would understand how serious the government took it then, and how serious the Nigerian people took it. 16 audit firms. And then a report came out. It was submitted publicly also, a lot of fanfare to the Auditor General of the Federation, Accountant General, the Attorney General, pardon me. But up till now, we are yet to know the content of the report, which is why SERAP wrote an FOI to the President. He also copied the Attorney General, which you would understand are key players, and they've given the role that they play. Simply asking for the contents of the report, or better still, publish it to the Nigerian people. They didn't respond, given the 7 days under the FY Act. So we went to court, the Federal High Court, Abuja, where we filed the suit. The President was the first respondent, and the Attorney General, of course, naturally, was the second respondent. They elected not to file a defense, which was quite, I don't know, perhaps surprising. And the court had the matter, and the court gave judgment. That's the Federal High Court in Abuja, Honorable Justice Olotu, and mandated the government to provide the details of this, the findings of the report, and make it public. And you would wonder, really, why would the government go to so much effort, given the corruption going on in that sector and the hype created then? And this is apart from the fact that this is a public document and not publish the content of that report. At the least, what that will do is put the mind of Nigerians at rest that we are really fighting corruption and bring some sort of relief to those in the Niger Delta who are supposed to be beneficiaries of the NDDC in the first place.
So at the end of the day, is the government saying, we're not going to publish it because we want to go through the judicial process? Because you're a lawyer, you know that they will always say that, of course, the law is saying that you're not guilty until found guilty by a court of competent jurisdiction. So how is this different?
No, this is different. This is a report this is an audit report commissioned by government. It's not different from any other white paper or blue paper or a commission of inquiry. And so this is not a criminal charge, or at least until law enforcement agencies do their job. This is the first set, if you ask me. Even in cases where the EFCC, police, and the ICPC take up, sometimes they rely on technical expertise of people who have competencies to do such things. In this instance, if 16 audit firms have gone through a process and reviewed it, if it's made public, it will perhaps give grounds for the EFCC and the ICPC and the Nigerian police force to do their job. And perhaps, I want to assume that the report says nobody is culpable, that all is fine with the NDDC. Then we all know that there's nothing wrong. But not releasing that report does not let us know what is happening with the NDDC.
So what does this say about the government, the current government, when you say they refuse to file? Is it a defense now?
Yeah, they didn't participate in the lawsuit. They were served.
They were served.
Hearing notice after hearing notice, processes after processes.
So now that the court has ruled against them, have they also been served of the outcome of the court judgment?
Yes, we've sent them
So what are they saying?
Nothing so far, at least formally, nothing. There has been some informal communication from the Office of the Attorney General, but nothing so far. Because we serve them all the court processes, we send them letters, we send them the judgments, but they've said nothing. And if you ask me, what does it say about this administration? Of course.
That's exactly my next question.
It says exactly that this administration is not keen about fighting corruption. Perhaps, at the face of it, they want to make Nigerians believe that, but I see no reason why this should not be made public. Like I've said, perhaps it will give people some sort of comfort that maybe there is no corruption in the NDDC overall, after all. But let the report be public. And if there are people that are found culpable, let the law enforcement agencies do their job. It's as simple as that.
At SERAP, have you been able to find what is the content of that report?
No, of course. There is no way we can. And that is why we went around. We didn't intend to go to court, really. That's why we sent an FOI request, simply asking for copies of the report and for the report to be made public. We didn't get that, and that is why we had to go to court. 2021 till November 2025. That's 4 years of litigation in court before the court sided with the Nigerian people and mandated the government to provide the.
So are you going to, if the federal government refuses to act according to how the court has decided against them, any other amendments to that effect, or what exactly is the next line of action? Because SERAP has a lot of judgments which we're going to go into against the government. So let's deal with this first, because this is an important case. Niger Delta has been through the hell and warm waters. Really. I was born and bred in the Niger Delta, so I know exactly what this is in terms of the pain the people go through. I come from a village where I can see exactly what you're talking about. So it will be interesting to the people who live in the area, who are from the area, and the generality of Nigerians to know what happened to their money. 6 trillion naira meant for 13,000, maybe 13,000 projects. People would like to see what exactly happened. So what is the next line of action for SERAP?
What we've done on Friday was to write a letter, a second letter, you can call it a reminder, to the Office of the Attorney General, drawing his attention to the correspondent earlier and the judgment we forwarded to him, and telling him clearly that if he does not obey the judgment of court, we would have to take out contempt proceedings in court against him, which is what the law allows us to do. It is a judgment of court, it's yet to be appealed, and so he ought to be obeyed.
So let me find out from you. I know we've asked you this question, but maybe not belaboring it too much, but I'm going to ask again. SERAP has always gotten some judgments in their favor, some against them. But of all the judgments that SERAP has gotten against the federal government, have they obeyed any?
Not directly, but sometimes you see the public advocacy, which is why platforms like yours become very important, that compels the government to act due to public outcry, compels the government to obey. For instance, the judgment we got from the ECOWAS court some years ago, challenging the provisions of the Cybercrimes Act, particularly Section 24. The federal government subsequently, just a year down the line, amended Section 24 to bring it in conformity with the ruling of the ECOWAS court, but it still fell short. And that's why we went back to court again, to tell the court that, yes, there has been some sort of compliance because the act has been amended, but there are still problems with the act.
Are they dealing with litigation fatigue? Or it's just
so.
negligence?
I think it's impunity. Impunity is the word, really. Impunity is the word. Impunity is what makes government think that they cannot respect the judiciary. The same government, if you remember, the federal government, was quick to run to the Supreme Court when it comes to Naira. But you see, now, when it's in the interest of the people, transparency and accountability, you see government, particularly the executive, being very reluctant to obey judgments of court.
I think that is, as we're just discussing, we'll go back to some of the cases. I would like to highlight them. Isn't that bringing us to a deeper issue of institutional weakness in itself? Which is why some people, I remember when Festus Keyamo was being screened, you know, as at then, when they were screened, nobody really knew what their portfolio would be. I think it was under Buhari, I can't remember which of the screening, when he came up with these radical ideas, even regional Supreme Court and all and all of that, but they didn't send him to the Ministry of Ministry of Justice and to be the Attorney General of the Federation. But where I'm going to with all of that is that, isn't it time we insist that we now strengthen our institutions by separating the civil servant's role of Minister of Justice from the Attorney General of the Federation, who will stand for the people? Don't you think that conflict is really something a lot of these guys are finding it difficult to manage?
Yes, it would be ideal, and it's something we've also advocated for in the past, separating the office of the Attorney General from that of the Minister of Justice. But in this case, and in the cases of disobedience of orders of court, I do not think that is the main reason why government disobeys the order of court. It is not only the AG at the federal level that does that. Ministries do that. Even state governors do that. Agencies of state at the state level also they do that. It is a bigger problem, really, and it's simply the problem of impunity. Which is why, in this kind of case, and I'm happy that the president is a party to this suit, the president has the opportunity to set that example by obeying judgments of court. And not only obeying it, but being seen by the people to obey the order of court. And the order is very simple. The government has commissioned the report is out, publish the contents of the report. It's simply impunity. Separating the office would help, really, but most importantly for criminal prosecution, but not for something as releasing the contents of the report to the public. I do not think that would be the ultimate solution, because that is not a problem.
Perhaps politics is involved in all of this. We can't take our eyes off politics. Do you feel that perhaps it's because maybe names will be mentioned?
What would be the political angle for the AG to release a report? I wouldn't rule that out. But ultimately, people in government, particularly as an office as sensitive as that of the AG, on the balance, when it comes to public opinion, when it comes to governance issues and politics, I believe that governance should always trump, because, come on, that's in the interest of the people.
So let's stay with the law. What happens? What does the court do? Like, you've gone to court, you've gotten a judgment against the government, they refuse to file a defense, they've not appealed the case, you've written to them, you say you're going to write for an order, contempt of court, and all of this. What's the worst the court can do that if they just decided to stay, not really care whatever the outcome of that judgment is? What's the worst the court can do?
It's very simple, really. So the next step, I'll speak about it within the context of this case. So if they do not obey this judgment, the next process is to go back to the same court, the Federal Court of Abuja, and take out what is called contempt proceedings. Essentially, it's going back to the same court to say that this is a judgment that is yet to be obeyed. And then forms will be issued, which is, lawyers will call it Form 48, which is essentially a notice to the head of that institution. In this instance, the office of the Attorney General of the Federation. A notice from the court. And you can call it a second or third chance if you want to call it that way. It's telling him or her that this is the judgment of the court, and we give you a certain period to obey this judgment, or else you'll be committed to prison. And then it gives the person the permission to also still come back to court, to narrate to the court why he or she hasn't obeyed the judgment of court. And then if the person doesn't obey the court, ultimately what the court has powers to do is to commit that individual, in this case, the head of that institution, the Attorney General of the Federation, to prison for contempt.
We've not even seen Attorney General of a state committed to prison for contempt. How realistic is it? Because right now, Malami is facing EFCC. His people are angry. The ADC is reacting. There is political. We had a gentleman who is a big supporter of his, perhaps. I understand he wants to run for governor, Abubakar Malami. And some of the things people are spiting at him now is that this is the monster you guys created and it's coming to bite, which is the issue. There are several issues: the El Zazaki issue, the Shawore issue. I think I've forgotten there's one other prominent issue, that the argument around national security as against fundamental human rights, where it says national security takes supersede, is a premium, if you will, against fundamental human rights when national security is at risk. So when you say committed to prison, I'm pushing you to ask you realistic questions.
Yeah, really.
Realistic
That's what
questions.
we can do. SERAP is a legal advocacy organization. I'm a lawyer. So there is no extrajudicial step we can take than what we are doing. And that is why you would understand the passion, sometimes the kind of angst we feel with this kind of cases. Citizens have gone to court in alignment with the Constitution to ventilate their grievances. The court has ruled 3 years in court. The court has ruled. Why won't the government obey the judgment of court? Unfortunately, we can only act within the context of that law, and that is what the law allows. Ultimately, it will be the judge who will determine whether to commit the contempt, or in this instance, the Attorney General of the Federation, to prison or not. Ours is to start that process and to move forward. And Godfrey, you never know. There's always a first time.
We'd like to see that first time. Just obedience. I may not want to see somebody in prison, but if it comes to that, that's what the law says. Just obedience. But let's even expand the conversation further. I know before, I said I'll get back to it if we have time, so we have a bit of time. You see what is playing out with Aliko Dangote and the regulators as far as the issue is concerned. He's alleging, he's saying that local refineries that are just coming up soon, like his, which is the biggest refinery, perhaps one of the biggest refineries in the world. I think the 7th largest refinery in the world, and he wants to be bigger, even 1.2 or 1.4 million barrels per day ahead of the one in India. But it says that the regulators are corrupt and they're enabling corruption. Is that an area you guys are also looking into?
Of course. And of course, it was also surprising to me when I saw that report. But you would think that, again, maybe we need to give them a bit of a time. The next step, and looking forward, is what the government should do in response to these allegations. And they are weighty allegations. Like you mentioned earlier, names have been named, figures have been mentioned. This is no guesswork. And I do not think Dangote is the type that would throw words around. This is not social media, as it were. So I'm sure he has some sort of facts. The least the government should do, and this is an advice to the president, by the way, what the government should do is to ensure that anti-corruption agencies investigate. And that's why I like the way Mr. Dangote, Alhaji Dangote, had put it. He had called for an investigation. He said he didn't want the man to be fired. Let him be investigated. An investigation is not, it doesn't mean you are culpable. It's just an investigation.
Doesn't mean you're guilty.
So let the EFCC step in, let them do their thing, and let them come out also with their findings. That the organization is fine, and the head of the organization has done nothing wrong. And that is what would strengthen institutions like these in terms of the sensitive areas that they hold. You would understand that this agency was part of those unbundling that happened with the Petroleum Industry Act. I think 3 agencies, if I remember correctly, was put together to form what we've seen as the NDDC today.
One other question I've been having on my mind to ask you. What do you think, how would you assess this government's effort in fighting corruption?
Of course, I'm sure you know the answer.
I don't know the answer. That's why I'm asking you.
Of course, it's zero. It's more movement, but zero motion. Really. And it's quite disappointing.
Their counter-action will be, I'm looking at the front page of The Guardian. People under prosecution facing some form of investigation or court cases. Hadi Serika, Abubakar Malami, Emefiele, Umar Farouk, former, I've forgotten this minister. Now, this is Chris Ngige.
So, Godfrey,
if
I ask you,
they will list this as
how
efforts.
come most of those names, if not all, have some kind of political thing to it? Hey, how come? And that is why fighting corruption, it must be very clear, again from the president, that fighting corruption is very objective. There was no political thing to it. Most of these names you mentioned had some kind of political issues with the ruling party and perhaps that makes that so-called alleged fight looks a bit subjective, as it were. This government, if you ask me, is not very interested in fighting corruption. At the least, they want to appear to fight corruption, but not really fighting corruption.
So what can everyone do to, because we believe that the lowest hanging fruit to build in a democracy is not infrastructure, it's not even education. All of these things are important. It's the rule of law.
Yes. Transparency and accountability being a very simple part of it. Just be transparent, be accountable. Including when you make mistakes, people will see that you've made mistakes. And that is why government should obey laws like the FOI, Freedom of Information, that mandates institutions to proactively disclose. But when, issue a point, a government commissions a forensic audit of an organization, the report comes out in how many, more than 4 years, it is not released to the public. How can you genuinely say that that administration is transparent? How can you say they're accountable? And how can you ever say that they're fighting corruption?
In closing, let's look at the future. What does this portend for those who are looking outside in? Those, I'm talking investors, I'm talking the international community here, which I know you have a lot of conversations with. How do they see us when it comes to our fight against corruption? Do they take us seriously?
Not at all. And it's quite sad. I'm saying this as a patriot. It doesn't look good. It doesn't look good from the inside. It doesn't look good from the outside. There is no way it can look good when we have allegations of corruption that the government does nothing against. The Auditor General of the Federation publishes reports annually detailing out trillions of naira, including some against the NNPC, has been simply stolen and walked away, and the government does nothing about it. A report has been commissioned detailing high-level corruption. Nothing has been done about it. Alhaji Dangote has just made allegations. If nothing is done about it, of course, nobody's going to take you serious. They were fighting corruption. And that doesn't only affect us in terms of international politics, it also affects us economically for people who potentially may bring in some foreign investment.
I must thank you so much, Mr. Kolawole Oluwadare. SERAP Deputy Director, always a delight to have you. I just wanted to find out, let's say in the last 10 years, how many cases have you taken to court?
Did you say 10 years?
Okay, as far as you can remember.
So we can look, so SERAP is 21. So looking back 10 years, I think we benchmarked it some months ago. We filed, I think, almost 120 cases.
Against federal government?
Yes.
I mean, have you gotten
against various agencies of
agencies,
government. But we've gotten judgment in 17. Positive judgments. I mean judgments that won.
Okay. Keep up the good work. We need everybody to keep the government on their toes. And we'll be here to highlight what they are. As long as those issues are valid and is important to the public, we'll continue to put it out so that government will act responsibly where they are not. SERAP Deputy Director Kolawole Oluwadare, thank you, sir, for coming on the program. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Well, before we go, let's also tell you that just before we started the program, we got the judgment from the Supreme Court. I haven't seen the CTC, so I need to see the CTC to be able to understand in full terms. But the Supreme Court has ruled that the president has powers to suspend elected officials because the provision of 305 of the Constitution did not limit what extraordinary measures mean. So to that extent, the president has such powers. That is going to be a very controversial judgment in the coming days in terms of remarks, comments, and reactions. But that's it on the program. Thank you so much for your time and company. I'm Jeffrey Ozango. You've been served on Lunchtime Politics. Bye-bye.